And now, let us introduce our keynote speaker, Dr. Corey Wong.
Dr. Corey Wong is a special assistant to the president of Colorado State University and director of the Women and Gender Collaborative. Dr. Wong is also an assistant professor in the Center for Women's Studies and Gender Research. She earned a dual title PhD in philosophy and women's studies from the Pennsylvania State University after graduating summa cum laude with a BA in philosophy from Colorado State University.
With a passion for teaching, learning, and approaching education as a practice of freedom, Dr. Wong empowers others to think through everyday life experiences in ways that lend to personal transformation and greater social justice.
In addition to teaching in academic settings, she is committed to engaging diverse audiences on issues of gender, race, class, sexuality, cultural ignorance, epistemic injustice, and political resistance through her blog, YouTube channel, magazine articles, public lectures, TEDx talks, and as an independent philosophical practitioner.
Please join us in welcoming Dr. Wong to the stage.
Thank you so much. Wow. Thank you to the Executive Committee for inviting me to be here with all of you today. And thank you for the performances to start us off. Priscilla had feels and I have big emotions. I've got tears already, so thank you for inspiring me. I am really, truly honored to be here with you today. I get asked to do some talks here and there, but this was the one I was the most excited about because I think that what you're all up to, connecting with each other as high school students, is truly remarkable and one of the most important things that we can be doing to really make big change. So I'm so happy to see you. I'm honored to be here with you. Thank you so much, and I hope that after already an amazing morning, I can give you a little bit more to take with you through the day and then beyond. The theme for today, I think, is really lovely too. I'll say it again so we're all fresh in our memory of what we're up to. We are a string of lights and it takes more than one bulb to enlighten the world. I love that imagery of individual lights being all connected, and when we shine bright ourselves, then we help make the world a brighter place too. I think that's a beautiful image, and it's something that I think we can make connections to here this morning, but also to hold on to in your hearts and minds as you go through the day. So what I want to do is explore a little bit about what I have learned over the past several years on what it means to live a life where you are dedicating yourself to promoting things like diversity, inclusion, equity, social justice. I have the great privilege of being able to do this every single day for my work, and I know that that is a rarity. Not everybody gets to do this. So I want to share with you some of the things that I have learned along the way so that you can take that with you too. The first, I'm going to try to leave you with 4 total tips, and we'll start with the first one. The first one is really about learning. I think that for me, one of the things that I learned first was my story. And that was through a process of learning philosophy. So you heard in the introduction that my background is actually in feminist theory, feminist philosophy. I dedicated myself to diving deep into books, texts, words, ideas, concepts, and I learned a lot of things from a lot of different people. I have to thank my teachers who helped cultivate new understanding from me, but some of the best teachers that I've learned from are Bell Hooks, Audre Lorde, Gloria Anzaldúa, Marilyn Frye, Elizabeth Spellman. These are people who, I know people who know these people, which is really awesome. And the people who I've learned from are real life people in my life too. I emphasize that because we learn from each other and my teachers are the ones who have shaped me. So literally everything that I'm saying to you right now, most of it's not original. I got it from somebody else. And we learn from each other. But that's part of our journey, that's part of our story. So what I learned from all these people, the books, the essays, the lectures, and the seminars, I learned how to make sense of the world around me. Philosophy and feminist theory in particular gave me a lens that I could understand what was happening in my experiences. It helped me understand my own identities, helped me make sense of what it meant to be half white, half Chinese, Asian American woman, growing up in Idaho, surrounded by predominantly white people. It helped me make sense of my class identity, my sexuality. It helped me understand and navigate some of the hardest experiences I've had in my life, things from abuse and sexual violence. It helped me understand the way that institutions and systems are set up to be hard for some people to navigate. And all of those were tools that helped me better understand the world around me and then my place in it. And that has been the most important thing for me because it empowered me to understand, okay, I can do this. I am learning from everybody else who's helping me understand how to make sense of the world and do well and be strong and improve upon it. So with all of that, my story is clearly still developing. I'm still learning all the time, but I went and did graduate school for 5 years to earn my PhD in feminist philosophy. It was a grind, it took a lot of work. That was after graduating from CSU here. And one of the happiest surprises happened when I was done with that 5 years of intense study. I came to CSU and I started working, and I met a lot of other people who were not philosophers. So the happy surprise is that I was like, wait a minute. One, I dig myself out of those books, and I started interacting with other people who were saying really cool things too. They had learned things about the world. They had insight. They understood truth. They had glimpses of wisdom, of understanding the way that the world operated, and they didn't come from a philosophy background. They came from education, or they came from political science. Sometimes it was creative writing, or people actually go to school to learn how to teach others about social justice. And I was like, you all got a degree in this? I spent so many years trying to figure it out and how to connect it with others, but you can go to school and learn so many different things. So my happy surprise, after not having to be surrounded only by philosophy and philosophers, was the realization that there are so many paths to truth, so many paths to gain wisdom and experience and to help us understand the world. And I think that that has been something I've grown to be incredibly grateful for. That I'm just grateful for the fact that people are doing their work, that they're walking their path, and we might come at it from different angles, but the lesson is that the truth and the wisdom of how to live a life that encourages social justice, that embodies freedom and liberation, there are kernels of truth and wisdom there that transcend our disciplines. If we have that kind of understanding, we get to that depth of knowledge, then that can carry through everything that we do, regardless of where we're coming from. So with that, I've been learning my own story, and I've been learning the stories of others. Sometimes I hear through what they say in their discipline and their study to be like, okay, I get that. I get what you're talking about. You're talking about lifting marginalized voices. You're talking about letting marginalized communities determine and guide themselves. These are easy principles that you don't have to study philosophy to get to, but if you're studying truth and gaining wisdom and having a critical lens of understanding the world, you'll get there too. That's exciting to me. But beyond our disciplines, there are many different ways to learn and have different teachers. So I have spent the past couple of days watching Netflix, and I watched Beyonce's Homecoming. Yes. And Beyonce says that life was her teacher. She was on tour for all of her life. She didn't go to school. She didn't go to graduate school. She didn't get a PhD. But the things that she's doing in her art are also reflecting some of that truth and wisdom about how to make the world a better place, how to burn a little brighter and enlighten the world. So let's put Beyonce over here for a second, because I'm gonna bring her back. So Beyonce's life as a teacher, we can find teachers all over the place, and that's where I want to connect to learning your story, but also learning the stories of others. I know that the executive committee asked me to be here today because they've seen some of the other work that I've done relating to feminist friendship. And feminist friendship is an idea that I've been working on, again, after graduate school. School was great, but I'm going to share with you all the learning that I've had since leaving my graduate degrees. So I've been working this idea of feminist friendship, and really it's pretty simple. The idea is just that we need to learn from each other by sharing in real, genuine dialogue about our different experiences. It doesn't take a lot more than just listening, then being eager and willing to understand how somebody else is different from us and what that means, what their story reflects. But we can learn a lot from each other by listening to our stories. And I find hope in all of that too. So if you're ever needing, a little pick-me-up, if things start feeling really heavy or really dire and the world is a difficult place, one of the things that I think we should all reach out to do is find another person and learn about their story so that we can see their humanity and in that process get reacquainted with our own. It's a good reminder that we all have a unique path and we all have unique experiences, but there is something that connects us. In addition to like that string of lights where we're connecting side by side in a nice chain, one of the other things that I have really grown to appreciate after leaving graduate school is the significance of history and listening to the people who have come before us. That wisdom and the truth about a world, something that we can change, how we can live differently, what it would look like, what it would feel like, that's not necessarily new, thank goodness, because other people have been saying this for such a long time. So I encourage you that as you learn your own story and listen to the stories of others, make that horizontal where you're looking with the peers and your colleagues and your communities, listen to each other, but also look back and find the wisdom from the people who came before you. When I've been doing the feminist friendship work, I center texts and essays that are coming from women of color in the 70s and the 80s because there is so much power and so much insight in the experiences and the essays of people like Audre Lorde, for instance, as one of those. Marie Lugones is another one of my loves and favorites. And that has helped me find another set of comfort and hope and confidence in knowing that when we're all learning, this path is ongoing, we don't have to start at square one. Thank goodness for that. Other people have given us their gift of knowledge and experience, and we can utilize that so that we don't all start from a point of here's the starting line, but we can sort of expedite this process of learning and we can learn from each other to kind of make change go a little bit faster. I think it's a way that we can honor and respect everything that people have done to pave the way to get us here. And so that's going to lead to my second point that I hope you take away from this. As you learn your story and you learn the stories of others, share what you learn. It's a privilege to be able to do the work that I do. It's a privilege to be able to study these things and to interact with everybody. But I think that with that privilege of being able to dig deep into ideas and theories and concepts that help me better understand the world, there also comes a responsibility then to share what is learned. Not everybody gets the chance to come to a conference like this. Not everybody gets the opportunity to go to school. Not everybody has great teachers readily available to them. And because of that, when you learn, I think we have the responsibility to share the things that we are learning with others. We can do that in a way that's not arrogant and not self-righteous, but really with a sense of humility and gratitude for the things that we are all in process of learning too. So share with others what you learn, to invite them into that process, and you'll probably learn with them, and that is really at the heart of feminist friendship, but that's a different talk, so I won't go too far into that. I think that the generosity of sharing what we learn, not having to hold tight to it in some kind of possessive way, but that truth should be given freely. That's something that we can offer anytime to anyone and readily with an open heart. It's not ours to hold because we didn't come up with it necessarily, right? It might be new to you, that's exciting, but you didn't come up with it. If there's truth in what you are learning about how to respect other people, about how to love yourself, about how to live in a world that looks different from what we know and are familiar with oppression and violence, those are things that we should give as openly, generously, and fully as possible. That's our gift to others. So as you learn and you share, I hope that you can share in whatever medium carries your voice and the truth of your own understanding. That can come through dance, that can come through art, poetry. Thank you for sharing your gifts with us this morning. It can come in so many different forms, from film to essays. It could be a conversation that you have, a dinner party that you throw, but the ways that we share the truth and the things that we learn about how to be better in the world, how to love each other more fully, that can happen in so many different formats. That, to me, reflects the opportunity for us to be eager learners. You can go to Netflix and learn things now. You can go on social media and expose yourself to different perspectives. I think that we live in a wonderful time where our opportunities to learn and see different perspectives, to reflect on these issues in critical and new ways, it surrounds us. I listen to things now that I didn't have access to before. There are books at our fingertips. The internet is amazing. Social media, I think, is a powerful tool. But we have the opportunity to choose how we expose ourselves to different information and whether we leverage all those contact points for resources to be opportunities for our growth. And again, in turn, we can utilize those platforms, utilize our mediums to be the things that we use to share with others too. And that is why I am grateful for all the creators. Since I've left school, since I've been a working professional, I spend a lot of time in meetings with other people who spend their time in meetings, and it's not the most exciting or creative professional life, but I am inspired and so grateful for the people who dedicate their time to creating things differently for all of us to be exposed to. This is going to connect to another lesson that I've sort of been reflecting on and really toying with for the past couple of years. And as I've been working with students and speaking with groups, I've sort of shifted the way that I think about oppression and diversity, equity, and inclusion, because theories and books and essays, they can teach us how to identify and spot the problems in the world. We can see what's wrong with the world pretty easily, and then we develop a critical consciousness to be able to identify what's not working. So we can say, that's wrong, that's bad, this is not okay, it has to stop. But the challenge that I've been posing to people now is for us to be thinking, we know what oppression looks like, we live it every day, we're surrounded by it constantly. What does a world without oppression look like? I've been asking people this for the past several years, and I think it's an important exercise for us to ruminate on, to really take some time and think, what would a world without oppression look like? What would it feel like? How would you feel? If we lived in a world without oppression, what would your relationships with other people look like? Who would you be friends with? Where would you live? What would you do with your free time? In a world without oppression, what would cause you stress? What would you be afraid of if there wasn't oppression? There may still be struggle and hardship, but I think it would be of a different sort. So when we explore this question and really meditate on what would a world without oppression look like, some of the quick responses I've heard from students and others tend to reflect on the negative. There would be no oppression, there would be no racism, there'd be no sexism, there would be no inequality. If we lived in a world without oppression, there would be no hate and violence, there would be no dirty looks and judgments, there would be no distancing ourselves from other people because we're uncomfortable. If we lived in a world without oppression, there would be no alienation and isolation. I wouldn't feel so crummy all the time. And all that might be true, but I want to challenge us to think even beyond what a world without oppression lacks, to really center our energy on imagining what a world without oppression would hold. What would it contain? We can say what it doesn't have, but what does it have? That shift to a direction of thinking and imagining a world without oppression, to me, looks very different, and it makes me excited. For me, if we didn't have to spend so much of our time tired fighting oppression, I think we'd spend a lot more time creating art, writing poetry, inspiring each other, doing dance. I think we would have a lot more energy to build things instead of dismantling systems. I think that if we lived in a world without oppression, we would have more joy, more celebration, more community, and more connection. I think that we would feel seen, we would feel heard and understood, we would feel loved and accepted. We wouldn't feel uncomfortable, but we would feel comfort in our communities. In a world without oppression, things look very different to me. And I hold that vision that I've spent some time thinking about, that I encourage you again, go home, think about it. Imagine your world without oppression, because that requires an act of imagination. A radical, liberatory imagination is one of our best tools that we can have to give us a vision and a goal that we can move towards. We can say we don't want oppression, we don't want racism, and we try to stop and dismantle those things, tear it down, smash the patriarchy. But if all we're doing is dismantling and taking things out, what are we building in place of it? That's where I think we haven't spent enough time thinking together, imagining together, and building our sense of vision, goals, and hope for what a different reality would actually look like. Part of that is because we are so inundated with the tools of the oppressor. We live in these systems. And so my invitation for you is to think outside of that. That thinking beyond the systems that contain us, that hold us back, that itself is an act of imagination and it's an act of resistance. Because we can now dream up and envision something differently. So I want for all of us to think about learning our stories, learning the stories of others, sharing what we learn, and doing so that we can create art, create something new, create a new world, create new ways of being with one another, new ways of living, new ways of painting the world. And all of that is what we need to create a radical new reality where liberation is possible. It's not going to happen where we are. We need to make something totally new. And that is exciting. So those were the past couple of years, reflections, feminist friendship, sharing, learning across difference, connection, thinking about a world without oppression and all of its glory. And the last lesson that I've been reflecting on, really for the past year, I'm a little ashamed to admit it, but I've said I want us to share the things we're learning, so here's something I've learned. In the past year, one of the biggest lessons I've learned is actually about love. And I don't want that to sound all mushy-gushy and like warm and fuzzy, but I think that all of our actions, the learning, the sharing, the creating, the connecting, need to be rooted in love, and that's not going to work if we don't know what love is. So we might be mystified in thinking about what love is. I don't know, it's that eternal question that the poets and the artists have been asking forever. The philosophers won't ever give you a straight answer on it. But I don't think it has to be so difficult. So I'm going to share with you what I have learned from Bell Hooks, which I wanted to put Bell Hooks here when I was talking about her earlier because Beyonce and Bell Hooks had some beef a few years ago. But for now, for this talk, they're going to acknowledge their differences and be friends. So Beyonce's here, and Bell Hooks is here. And Bell Hooks is one of my favorite scholars and authors, someone who has taught me so much. I haven't met her, but she's alive and well, and I'm so grateful that she's still able to influence us all. And one thing that Bell Hooks learned from Erich Fromm, who was like way before her too, is a definition of love that I think we can all utilize. So rather than love being something mushy-gushy and like nebulous that you'll know when you know, that's not what love is. For them, they define love as the will to extend oneself for one's own or another's spiritual growth. The will to extend oneself for one's own or another's spiritual growth. I like this definition because it doesn't make love a fleeting emotion. It's not something that just happens, poof, in a train station when you bump into a stranger. Love is an action, it's a choice, it's a practice, and it takes effort. The will to extend oneself, that means you choose to stretch in times for your own growth and for that of others. Spiritual development, if that's a little iffy for you, you could think of it, or spiritual growth, you could think of it as holistic development. And these days, I just think about that as healing. So I think of love as the will to extend oneself for one's own or another's spiritual growth or healing. When we think about love in that way, I think it helps center all the ways that we might learn our own stories. The way that we might learn about the world. Why are we learning about the world? Let's do it out of love. When we share what we learn with others, Why do we share? Not to prove someone wrong, not to make someone feel stupid, not to make ourselves feel better, but if we share what we learn out of love, we extend ourselves for one's own and for others' healing and spiritual growth. And when we create, why do we create? Let's create out of love so that that can be part of how we rebuild a different world where things are radically new. So with all of this, I'm going to bring some Beyonce back. Because if you don't believe me, I think you'll believe Beyonce. In Homecoming, Beyonce was talking about Coachella and the performance that they put together, and it was amazing. But she says, I feel we made something that made my daughter proud, that made all my brothers and sisters around the world proud, and that's why I live. I am so lucky and grateful that I'm able to take all these crazy ideas and actually make it into something that heals people, that may spark vision in people, that shows them to dream big, that shows them that they are limitless. Beyonce's life teacher was life, but can you hear some of those threads of wisdom and truth too? It carries through. We don't all have to be philosophers, or we don't all have to be artists in order to say similar things. But the most powerful thing about that comment from Beyonce is how she ends it, honestly. I can't quote it verbatim right now, but I will just sum it up for you. Basically, she says, if I can do it, then so can you. Coming from where she came from, she became Beyonce. And she has Beachella now. So if Beyonce can do it, so can you. So those are the things I wanted to leave you with. Learn your story. Learn the stories of others. Share the truth of what you learn generously and humbly. Give it out freely. Create new ways to live, to be, to heal, to connect, to exist in community, and do it out of love. Do all of those things by choosing to extend yourself for your own and others' spiritual growth and healing. I think that's how we can make the world a better place. That's how we can do this work authentically, with integrity. And Beyonce believes in you. I believe in you. I hope you all have a terrific day connecting with one another and learning from each other. Thank you so much for letting me be here with you this morning. Take what you learn and make the world a brighter place. Thank you so much.